Talk Live.
Welcome to episode number 18 of Free Talk Cast, brought to you by LRN.FM. Of course, we do have a Patreon there that you can join. Patreon.com/LRNFM if you would like to do that. Again, that's Patreon.com/LRNFM. There's really only one perk to signing up that you don't get just by, subscribing to the podcast, and that is that you get the podcast a day early. There are some additional perks being planned when we launch other projects and things like that, because Free Talk Live, of course, is going down to being weekends only, which frees up a lot of our time to pursue other projects that we are more passionate about. And that's sort of the issue that we've been running into with Free Talk Live, is that we just no longer have the passion for doing it at this level of intensity. 7 nights a week, every single day.
It's hardcore.
Yeah, 365 days a year. And burnout is a thing that happens, and even Ian has been burned out on it for several years. So we made that decision, and that's going to free us up to pursue things that we are passionate about. Like, I really enjoy writing, but I have very little time these days to do it. And the primary day that I would engage in that would be Monday. But of course, Monday I have the Free Talk Live episode that I do. Only for like 11 more weeks, though. On January the 5th, we are airing the last weeknight episode of the show. We'll probably continue doing an internet-only show on Monday nights, but there's no responsibility there. It's very similar to the podcast, where we don't have to be at a specific place at a specific time doing a specific thing. And when you don't have that, you get rid of a lot of the obligation factor. And that's going to be a tremendous relief to everyone involved, other than the creator of the show, Ian Freeman, who, as I mentioned, has been burned out on the show for a while, probably will be newly motivated to do it again when he gets out of federal prison. And that's what we want to talk about today, because the Free Ian Now campaign has officially launched. That's hashtag Free Ian Now. And they have a website, freeiannow.org. I'm not exactly sure who even put this together.
It looks great.
It does look great.
It's fantastic. And there's some great, I was looking through it. There is a ton of information on there. So anyone who doesn't know anything about the Crypto 6 or Ian's situation, I highly recommend going to freeiannow.org, and you can learn all about this. Share it with your friends, send it to your mom, post it on Facebook, post it on Twitter, and sign the petition.
Now, obviously, Bonnie Freeman, that would be Ian's wife, is heavily involved in this project, and she's the one kickstarting it and spearheading it and likely funding it and all of these other things. I don't know who actually created the website and the petition and all of the other fancy little bells and features that we have here at freeiannow.org, because I haven't looked into it, because it's not super important.
Yeah, this is the first day. It's launched on the day that we're recording.
Right.
So not the day you're listening to this, most likely.
Which is almost a year to the day of when Ian was sentenced to prison and taken into custody by the U.S. Marshals. Of course, that was October the 2nd of 2023. But that in fact probably, and this is a speculation on my part, it probably inspired I think Jacob Hornberger, because he's got his name on a lot of this stuff, to reach out to Ian and the two of them to work together to create freeiannow.org, a process which would have taken about 3 weeks to have finished and get ready to roll out. And I suspect that was the catalyst that caused this, but I don't know. Ian Freeman, however, has been in federal custody for a little over a year now. And prior to that, he spent 2.5 years under pretrial release, under home confinement, actually. And he was given a surprising amount of leeway to leave the house and to go engage in activism, but he's a member of the press, and the prosecutors appeared to be a little salty about this at his sentencing hearing.
I mean, there's no reason why he shouldn't be. It's crazy to, put him on home confinement before he's even sentenced, before he was even, convicted, right? I mean, he's a nonviolent. It's a victimless, quote unquote, crime. So, I mean, he's not a flight risk. There was really no reason at all to keep him on home confinement.
Well, the prosecutors didn't want him released at all. They had kept him in jail, I think, for about 2 or 3 months after the initial arrest in March the 16th of 2021. And they made the allegation that he had no significant ties to New Hampshire, and yeah,
Which is
has a lot of money.
ridiculous. So ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like, just such a blatant lie. They knew they were lying. There's no way just
Right.
totally pulled that out of their ass. Ian has so many ties to New Hampshire, and he has for, 20 years?
Yeah, the dude
So-
owns property, two different pieces of property in New Hampshire. He has many ties to local business owners throughout Keene, New Hampshire,
Yeah.
throughout New Hampshire as a whole.
A wife, an entire community.
Yeah. He has a radio show that is based in New Hampshire, and he has spent the better part of 2 decades encouraging people
Yeah.
to move to New Hampshire.
Yeah.
It's absolutely insane for them to have made the argument that he has no significant
Yeah.
ties to New Hampshire. You can't
Yeah.
make this guy leave
Literally-
New Hampshire.
Literally anyone who has ever listened to an episode of Free Talk Live would know this, because Ian is always talking about how great New Hampshire is and how any freedom lover, like, this is the place for them. Like, this is the best place for freedom and liberty in the world.
Mark has even talked about this repeatedly on Free Talk Live prior to the raid, prior to the arrest, when I was planning on going to the Marianas Islands with Mark on one occasion, and I wanted Ian to go as well. But Mark pointed out to me, this is futile. You're not going to get anywhere. Ian doesn't want to drive 40 minutes to Massachusetts. He's definitely not going to the Marianas Islands. And it's not because he hates traveling or he's a homebody or anything like that. It's just because he loves New Hampshire so much compared to any other place that he could be. And like, you can't make the guy leave New Hampshire. This prison stay in Massachusetts is going to be the longest period of time that he's been out of New Hampshire, probably in his adult life, or
Yeah.
at least since he moved away from Sarasota, Florida. I think it was Sarasota. And, he is in federal prison right now for operating an unlicensed money transmitting business, according to the FBI. He was selling Bitcoin. And a lot of people have done this, and a lot of people have gone to prison for this. One of my memories recently on one of these social media networks that I use called up one of the Bitcoin magazine articles that was written about me and Ian prior to the arrest. About a year prior to the FBI raid in 2021, Bitcoin magazine wrote an article that featured me and Ian Friedman talking about buying and selling Bitcoin.
I didn't know this.
And it had one particular sentence in there that just irked me and drove me crazy. So I contacted the author. I was like, can you please reword this? Because this person has been arrested for arbitraging Bitcoin at localbitcoins.com, which is something that both Freeman and DeMezzo do. And that was pretty much the full sentence, right? So I contacted this guy. I was like,
What?
hey, can you kind of not point
Yeah,
the
why
FBI
would-
directly at me? Like, why would you even word it that way?
Yeah.
He was like, and obviously the magazine had already been printed at that point, so nothing could be done. But like, man, why didn't you, really, did you not realize that you were pointing the finger directly at me and Ian and saying, hey, FBI, what about these guys? And your
Yeah.
Bitcoin magazine, you're supposed to be on our side? So very unfortunate, but that was what was happening. Ian was buying and selling Bitcoin, and it was part of an effort to help the ordinary person acquire cryptocurrency in a way that wasn't carefully regulated and controlled by the federal government.
Which is not illegal.
It is
by
not.
the way.
Ian has a long history of helping people acquire cryptocurrency, and I noticed that the prosecutors did not bring this up in trial. Yes, Ian sold Bitcoin. Ian gave away a ton of cryptocurrency for years through freekeene.com. He ran a monthly giveaway of $250 in Bitcoin and $250 in Bitcoin Cash. And all you had to do to enter this giveaway was install a wallet to your phone and email him and say, hey, I've never had any cryptocurrency before, but I heard your ad, which he advertised on local radio stations throughout New Hampshire. And so I've installed this wallet and I'm reaching out to you because I want the free Bitcoin that you mentioned. And he would give them $25 in Bitcoin and $25 in Bitcoin Cash. No strings attached. They could spend it however they wanted, doing whatever they wanted, and he was just giving it to people. I don't know how many people he gave cryptocurrency to, but it was a lot because I was his friend through all of this period. So I was watching these entries come in, and he was literally giving people Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash in order to help them get into it and to acquire it and to foster an interest in it. He also was one of the main people going around through businesses throughout the Keene, New Hampshire community and other parts of New Hampshire, encouraging business owners to accept cryptocurrency as payment. And when you have one person doing that, it's not worth a whole lot. But when you have multiple people visiting these establishments multiple times a week saying, hey, you guys take Bitcoin and I'll come here more often, then it starts to have an effect. Ian, I don't want to say single-handedly, but Ian was the main driving force behind almost every single establishment in Keene, New Hampshire that accepted Bitcoin. There was one other person who was going around doing this on the side who had monumental success as well. He was the one who got the Keene barber to accept Bitcoin. But by and large, it was Ian Freeman who was going out there engaging in this activism, getting places like Curry Indian, Corner News, Local Burger, Wilder Automotive, the Dowry Dentist Office to accept cryptocurrency as payment for their services. And that's a phenomenal thing that never gets talked about in the Crypto 6 case, right? No one ever talks about the fact that Ian was literally giving away cryptocurrency to anyone who would install a wallet. And if you did enter into this monthly giveaway, and every single month he did give away an additional $500 worth of cryptocurrency just to a random person who had been willing to install a wallet. You didn't even have to be in New Hampshire in order to get this money. You just had to be a first-time crypto user who emailed him. None of that activism made its way into the court case. And this is a guy who is dedicated to the ideas of cryptocurrency and what it represents. Wholesale. He is wholeheartedly devoted to this cause, to freeing people from the tyranny of the U.S. government controlling the money supply, from allowing them to inflate the currency to pay for their endless wars, to pay for the drug war, to pay for the police state that is oppressing everyone. Cryptocurrency is a way out of that. And Ian was dedicated, I don't want to say almost exclusively, but yeah, almost exclusively to the cryptocurrency world and to getting people into cryptocurrency.
And of course, the prosecution was spinning it like, oh, he's just a mastermind. Would they call him like a kingpin or something? Like just
they
ridiculous
called him a criminal
things.
mastermind at one point.
Yeah.
This
So
is
he's
the
just
guy who he uses a 3-in-1 shampoo, conditioner, body soap, right? This is your criminal and no offense to Ian. I love the guy to death, but that doesn't strike me as the mindset of a criminal mastermind. Right, this dude. Plus, okay, to give you some context, again, I love Ian to death, but he's a quirky dude. He would stand in the shower once a month and just take a razor, not a razor like you would use to shave your face, like clippers, I guess is what I'm looking for. He would take clippers and just shave his entire head, once a month, just standing there in the shower, and then he would take his 3-in-1 and he would basically just coat himself in it, and he would just shower, right? And that's Ian Freeman.
So
right?
the point you're trying to make is he was more of a thrifty person. Like he wasn't trying to, get riches, and he's not buying sports cars and mansions and all of these things. Very down to earth,
incredibly
frugal,
down to earth. Yeah. The dude reuses zip ties. And he and I got into, I don't want to say arguments because I've never argued with Ian, but they were disagreements about reusing zip ties after PorcFest, where he would take a pocket knife, he would carefully peel the tab back and undo the zip tie so we could use it again next year. And I'm like, dude, I will just buy another pack of zip ties.
Arya over here being wasteful.
Yeah, just cut the damn things off. Yeah, and I don't want to give the impression that Ian was like this frugal millionaire either, because he wasn't that. He would spend money when it was a good idea to
you were
spend
just saying
money.
that he was giving away free crypto and he's donated a ton of money to charities.
He has indeed.
Very generous person.
Yeah, and wasting money on zip ties just doesn't really fit within that narrative of, if he's buying zip ties, then that's less money that he has to literally give away to charities and to just people who want to get into cryptocurrency. And for all of this effort, he was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison on October the 2nd of 2023 after spending the better part of 3 years on home confinement, all for the crime of helping people to acquire Bitcoin. And there's a new campaign now at freeiannow.org where you can go to learn way more about this than what I just said. But I was also one of the Crypto 6.
Yeah.
And I was the only other one who was charged with the same crime of operating an unlicensed money transmitting business. So I have a pretty good handle on, why they arrested him and how the trial went and what this whole thing was about. So there's too much in my head for me to communicate in a succinct, useful way, honestly. And that's where the real beauty of things like freeiannow.org come into play, because you can go there and you can learn about these things without all of the useless fluff that I'm going to include, because I was there through it.
Yeah, it's very personal for you, right? You were in prison for almost a year.
I was in the same facility that Ian is now in fact. And I recently learned that Courtney, one of my friends in there, this black dude, Big J, the Spanish dude, the Mexican that I bunked with, called him Milk Dud because his head looked like a milk dud, according to Big J. Anyway, so when I think about it, I want to call him Milk Dud because that's just what we ended up calling him. But anyway, his name was Courtney, and he was a really great guy. He was the GED tutor there. He was also the baker, and I was on really good terms with him. So he would bring me cinnamon rolls and cookies and stuff that he would make. I have since found out that he was also giving Ian cinnamon rolls.
Oh.
Yeah, which is really awesome. And I don't know what sort of thing the two of them came up with, but I'm happy about that because Courtney was not a tit for tat kind of person. And you encounter a lot of that in prison.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Where everyone's keeping tabs on what everyone else owes them. And I was never like that. Flip was never like that. And Courtney was never like that. There were a few other people who were never really like that as well. But when Courtney gave me cinnamon rolls, it was never in payment for anything. He never expected anything back.
Just a nice guy.
But of course, I would make cucumber salad and then take him some of that. So there was some give and take there, but it wasn't quantified. And that's one of the issues I had with federal prison, is that it does take human relationships and strip them down to their bare basic elements, which is everything is a matter of give and take. And in prison, you measure that give and take. Anyway, so Courtney was giving Ian cinnamon rolls, and Courtney, who has since been released, and now Ian, who was working in the warehouse, which is tedious and awful and requires lots of heavy lifting, Ian is now the GED tutor at the Devens camp. So that's a huge upgrade for him. I'm really happy to be able to talk about that because I don't want to say it's a cushy job because all of the jobs in federal prison are relatively cushy.
It's more meaningful, though.
It is more meaningful,
yeah,
definitely. And of course, he wants to be busy. He wants to engage in some sort of activism. I was able to engage in activism when I was in federal custody by writing up motions for compassionate release and sentence reduction and things of that nature for other inmates who were less legally capable than I was. And plus, I'm really good at word editing. I'm a really fast typer, and I'm really good at editing documents. And the software that you have in federal prison is extremely limited. Mm-hmm. But I figured out ways to make it look more or less correct. So that was the activism that I engaged in addition to the standard trans activism of just trying to get them
existing.
Yeah. And trying to get them to follow their actual policies in regard to trans people. And on that note, I did get the Federal Bureau of Prisons in writing, acknowledging that they were violating the trans policy in regard to me and that they were going to continue doing so. So I do have to pursue that with an attorney at some point, but it's not really a priority. And I don't care about that in and of itself, but when I graduated from the drug program, which is basically DARE in prison, that's all it was, they gave me a certificate that said Aria DeMezzo, and it had his on it. And I brought this to the attention of the person who does the program, who, by the way, is a psychologist from the psychology department who should freaking know better. And she was like, oh my God, I didn't even realize that was on there. So she printed me up a new one with her on it, and she gave that to me. And amazingly, she told me to just keep the old one and throw it away or whatever. So obviously I kept it. This is evidence of you guys misgendering me. But the amazing thing was that I'm not the only trans person to go through that facility. And everyone who goes through the facility has to go through this drug education program. So none of the other trans people who ever took this class had ever brought it up with the person after the fact saying, hey, look, you misgendered me and you're not allowed to do that. Instead, they just sort of dealt with it because they were more than likely afraid to stand up for themselves. And that would be the reason, that would be the motive for me suing the Bureau of Prisons here, not because of me, but because in my experience, the other trans people in federal prison, in federal custody, were not willing to stand up for themselves. So it sucks, though. And we talked about it a bit last night at freetalklive.com. Apparently, at Free Talk Live, I guess, yeah, freetalklive.com works. Apparently, I had never made Chris aware of the time that the sewage like bubbled up into the
Oh my
bathrooms and
gosh.
the showers were unusable, and it also bubbled up into the walk-in where we keep the food, and they didn't throw out the food. Like that would be the first thing you do is you clean out the walk-in, you get rid of all of the food, you clean all of the containers, and then you make it usable again. But no, they didn't do that. They just cleaned up the sewage and made us use all the food that was in there. And
You know what's crazy? That happened in my elementary school.
Oh, goodness.
It was before I was there. My sisters were there though, and yeah, the sewage like bubbled up in the bathrooms.
It's
so just
awful.
another comparison between public school and federal prison. Yep.
We did have alternative bathrooms that we could use in like the visiting center / the TV room. But every time you used the bathroom there and you flushed it, it bubbled up more sewage in our main bathroom.
Oh, so it was just making it worse.
yeah.
Oh my
but
gosh.
I mean, you got to go.
Yeah, like what are you gonna do?
Yeah. It took them a few days to get out there and fix that. And they didn't fix it completely. They just thought they had. So a few days later, it had broken again. And so
Yeah.
that was when the sewage bubbled up into the walk-in refrigerator and, contaminated all of the food and probably caused a lot of people to get sick.
That is so fucking disgusting.
Yeah, it is. And like, you can't argue with the prison guards when they say, "Well, no, you have to use this food." I'm like, there was sewage in there. You can't feed people
Yeah,
this.
they
This
don't
isn't-
care.
Yeah, this is not fit for human consumption anymore, man. They don't care because they're not the ones who have to eat it. Apparently, that also happened, though, in the low security facility where Ian was at the time. So it wasn't just unique to the camp. These places are very understaffed and they're very badly maintained, more or less exactly as you would expect of a federal prison to be. So the sooner we can get Ian out of there, the better. And I have high hopes that we can see him released sooner rather than later. Now, obviously, he was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison. That doesn't mean he will serve 8 years in federal prison. It will probably be more like 55 months, 55 to 60 months, which is still 5 years in federal prison. And then he will be sent to a halfway house, probably for a year to a year and a half, after which he will be put on home confinement for probably 6 months, and that will be the end of his sentence. And that's regrettable, and that's going to suck, and Ian's going to hate the halfway house, but it's an improvement over federal prison. He does have an appeal out, and last I saw from his attorney, who was also my attorney throughout my case, but after my case ended, my attorney, guys, he was really, really good. Like, he was the best out of all of the attorneys involved, and I wanted him to become Ian's attorney. There's obviously some conflicts of interests in there, so we had to sign a bunch of waivers, and my case had to be completely ended. But eventually, my attorney did also become Ian's attorney in addition to Ian's other attorney. It all gets very confusing. None of it's really relevant, but this attorney sent me the overviews, basically, of the prosecutor's arguments and the defense arguments, and it's like 122 pages, and it's exhaustive.
And that's for your case or Ian's?
It's for Ian's appeal.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's exhaustive, it's intense, and it's going to take years
Jeez.
before this is even being heard by an appellate court, a court of appeals. And, it's a first level of appeals, so chances are good nothing will happen, that the court will agree with the prosecutors, I would imagine. Ian, however, is the type that will appeal this all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court.
Hell yeah.
And I think that's probably going to happen, because I think my attorney, or Ian's attorney now, is correct that with the Chevron deference and the new Supreme Court and the major questions doctrine, the Supreme Court has changed, where previously if a federal government agency was not forbidden from doing something, then they were considered to be allowed to do it. But under this new Supreme Court, this more conservative, more classical interpretation of the Constitution and the separation of powers, if a government agency has not explicitly been given power to do something, then it cannot do it. It's sort of the difference between being told what you can't do versus being told what you can do. And if you read the Constitution, there aren't very many things that the government is actually given the power to do. There's like Article 1, Section 8, and there's like 8 or 9 different powers that are delegated to the federal government, and there's like 2 that are given to the presidency. And it's not very much power. And they took this and they expanded it, and they basically said, well, anything that isn't mentioned here that we can't do, we must therefore be allowed to do. And that's, of course, an inaccurate understanding of the situation. And the new Supreme Court agrees with that. So they're saying, look, if you have not been explicitly authorized to do this, you can't do it. And of course, FinCEN was ultimately authorized to regulate cryptocurrency transactions, but that occurred in 2021, the year that Ian and I were arrested. It occurred, I think, on January the 1st of 2021 was when that wording went into effect that would have included cryptocurrency. Prior to that, cryptocurrency was not included in the wording that authorized FinCEN to regulate financial transactions. And because of that, and because of the timing of the raid, you have 6 months from FinCEN, from having to register with FinCEN in order to do so or to cease operating your business. You have 180 days. And because we were arrested within that first 180-day window, and obviously we ceased operating our, quote, money transmission business once we were arrested, the law, we didn't actually run afoul of the law because we would have only run afoul of it after 180 days of that law being changed to apply to us. And we were arrested prior to that. So we never actually got a chance to break the law. So I think he's got a really good chance of winning this appeal, but he'll probably be out of prison before that hearing actually happens. Probably.
You really think it would take that long?
Before he gets heard by the Supreme Court? Yeah, I think so. Now, the first layer of appeals, I mean, he's been in prison for a year already.
Yeah.
And
nothing has really happened.
Yeah. There's been some motions filed and some, I don't remember what the terminology was that the attorney used, but basically some overviews and synopses, those sorts of things have been filed to give the court an overview of what the case is about. But there's been no hearings, no trial, nothing that
It's
of
insane
substance.
that it takes this long.
And it will probably, yeah, it is.
I mean, it's inhumane.
And it will probably be next year, I imagine, before there's any actual hearings in this case. Very frustrating. So, but, you know, I'm hopeful. I don't have much hope for the Court of Appeals, but I do have high hopes that he will win this at the Supreme Court level. And if he does that, it benefits me because a Supreme Court ruling is the one of the few instances where I can appeal my conviction because I pled guilty and that takes away a lot of my rights, including the rights to appeal. However, if the Supreme Court decides that my action was not illegal, then I'm allowed to appeal. So if Ian wins his appeal, then I also get to appeal my conviction and get that overturned. But of course, none of this does anything about the 8 years that Ian will have spent in prison and under home confinement at the time of his release and at the time that any of this is done. You never get that time back.
Yeah. And it's insane how many people this happens to. I mean, like, this situation isn't really, well, just, being wrongfully imprisoned is not unique to Ian Freeman. I mean, we've even, on the radio show, we've covered so many instances of people being wrongfully imprisoned in so many different ways.
Yep.
Yeah, and there is no way to make that right.
No, there's not. Like, I will forever, for the rest of my life, be dealing with the consequences of having my door kicked in by the FBI, being held at gunpoint, they threatened to shoot me.
Yes.
And I imagine that Ian and Bonnie are going to be dealing for the rest of their lives with the fact that they smashed in windows and flew in actual drones, made Bonnie put on a pair of shoes that had broken glass in them.
Yeah, that is traumatic.
Yeah.
That is so traumatizing. It is inhumane to treat other human beings that way.
For not having a business license.
For a victimless crime, for non-violent people. And there is, to raid these homes in that way was completely unwarranted.
I mean, we're literally peace activists.
Yeah, there was a peace sign flag hanging in front of the house that also the stupid SWAT team guy ripped down.
Yeah, keyword being was. Yeah. When they're committing an act of aggression and an act of evil, I imagine they don't want to see a sign of peace.
Yeah, and they also smashed the security cameras.
They did?
Usually innocent people that aren't, harming others don't smash security cameras. But yeah, they're the good guys, right?
That's what they like to think, of course. And when the federal government comes after you, when any government agency comes after you, you cannot win. Even if Ian had won his case, even if I had gone to trial and I had won my case, and even if Ian had gone to trial and won his case, he didn't. He went to trial and was convicted. You don't ever get that time back. You never get that money back that you spent on defending yourself from the government. Ian is never going to get that restitution that they took from him back. All of the Bitcoin that they seized from his safe, the gold, the silver, he's never going to get any of that back.
Yeah.
And the peace of mind that they shatter when they invade your home. If you've never had your home violated, it's a traumatizing experience because your home is where you're supposed to feel safe,
Yeah.
right? But no, the FBI can smash in your door at any time. They shatter this illusion of safety that exists in your actual home, and you no longer feel safe anywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, if you can't feel safe at home, where can you feel safe?
It's a horrific thing to do to people.
And you never get any of this back, even if you win. So there is no winning against the government, and they know that. And that's part of the reason why they do what they do, and they pressure people into accepting plea deals and into more or less into accepting plea deals because that's what they ultimately want. And they increase the charges and increase the penalties, and they just do whatever they can to entice you into taking a plea deal because you know you're going to lose. You're not going to win. Even if you win the trial, you still lose. And they know that. So I wish we could end on a more uplifting note.
I know it's pretty dark, but
Yeah.
I mean, this is the reality. And hey, this is an uplifting note. There is this awesome new website that was just created, freeiannow.org. There is a petition on there. You can sign the petition to pledge your support. You can share it on social media, send it around, and spread the word about what's going on here.
Absolutely. So thank you so much for listening, and check out that website. That is freeiannow.org. Again, freeiannow.org.